Thank you all for being here. I also want to acknowledge all the members of our center, Dr. Gabby, Dr. Brahmi, Aasiyah, Ida, Shaletta will be here shortly, and Dr. Sonia as well. My name is Swellen Schneider. And if it is the first time you hear about our center, let me introduce you to our center. The Center for Global Partnership and Learning provides GSCP students with a myriad of services ranging from publications, certificate programs, access to the GSCP academic journal, our Scholarship Without Borders, and a few other services such as these celebrations, cultural celebrations such as the Women's History Month, info sessions, and workshops. Now, let me introduce to our speaker of the night, Dr. Aasiyah Ghazi. She is an associate faculty at the University of Arizona Global Campus, teaching leadership courses in the Bachelors of Art in Business Leadership program with the Forbes School of Business and Technology. In addition to teaching, Dr. Ghazi is a dissertation coach and a professional coach and trainer, facilitating various leadership training workshops, courses, and seminars with individuals and corporations. She is the host of her own podcast called Amplify Your Potential with Dr. Aasiyah Ghazi, which can be found in all podcast listening platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and others. Dr. Ghazi graduated from Pepperdine University in July 2021, obtaining her doctoral degree in organizational leadership in EDD. And she is currently back at Pepperdine University, earning her second doctorate, a PhD in global leadership and change. Dr. Ghazi's area of research is in human resources, focusing on virtual training and development, and women in leadership. Her dissertation focused on women leaders in the engineering field, using the best strategies and practices to overcome the feelings of inadequacy and imposterism. Dr. Ghazi has also published her first leadership journal on Amazon called the Creative Leader Journal. And she has created a certification course to teach people how to overcome impostor syndrome based on her 4-step model created during her dissertation study. Please, everyone, help me to welcome Dr. Aasiyah Ghazi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight this. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, joining in on the talk today that I'm going to have, or I'm going to talk to you about on imposter syndrome. I'm not going to use a PowerPoint. I really think that this is going to be a great way for us to just engage and talk and learn about not only what imposter syndrome is, but what the effects are and what we can do to help us to overcome it, really using our mindset and our capabilities. So let's go ahead and kind of begin this topic. What I want to know from all of you, and feel free to raise your hands if you're on video. If you're not on video, you can go ahead and just, I think there's the reactions. You can put your hands up with that. How many of you have heard of imposter syndrome? So go ahead and raise your hands. I see some hands coming up. Okay. Pretty much almost, yep. Thumbs up, hands up. Yep. Pretty much almost everybody has. Okay. Yeah. So here's the next question. How many of you have actually experienced the feeling of imposter syndrome, if you know what the definition is? If you don't know what the definition is, put it in the chat and let me know that you don't know the definition. And then we're going to go from there. Okay. I see hands coming up from some of you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So for those of you who haven't raised your hands, you probably are wondering, what is imposter syndrome? I might know what it is. Does this mean that I'm an imposter, or someone's being an imposter? What does this mean? I've had a lot of people ask this question to me, and that's why I'm asking all of you, because one of the things that I was given feedback was, in the last time I spoke, was you got to explain what imposter syndrome is, right? And so, Milena, you just said you might have possibly experienced this, but you're not sure. All right, so let's talk about what imposter syndrome is. So imposter syndrome, or as it was actually called, imposter phenomenon at one point, it was first discovered by two psychologists by the name of Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes. The two of them did a research where they actually spoke to 150 women. These women were high achievers. What does that mean to be a high achiever? Meaning that they had jobs that may have had very high positions. So they may have had director positions, high leadership positions. These were women who were doctors. Maybe they had doctorate degrees, they had PhDs. These were very high achieving women. They were very successful back in the 1970s. So this study actually occurred in 1978. And so when Dr. Clance and Dr. Imes interviewed these women said, wait a minute, we might have achieved this, but we don't believe that this was our work. We don't believe we were the ones who actually achieved the position. We don't think that this was really we didn't deserve the doctorate degree. And in the interview process, they were talking about how they were afraid to be found out about, which they called imposter. Dr. Clance and Dr. Imes they themed it as imposter, being afraid to be found out about, being afraid that the people are going to find out that they were actually not who they said they were, which they were. These were their own successes, their own accolades, but they could not accept the fact that they were successful. They had a very hard time believing in themselves. They lacked confidence, apparently, according to the study that I was reading. And what ended up happening was, as these women talked, they said, well, I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and that's how I got this position. Had nothing to do with my merits, when it did. But they couldn't acknowledge that. Some of the women also said that they felt that they just had to put on a different persona to be able to get what they were trying to get, that it wasn't really their work, that maybe they took somebody else's work and instead they were getting the credit rather than someone else. Well, who's the other person that got credit? Nobody. It was them, but they could not acknowledge that. So that's pretty much what imposter syndrome means. Imposter syndrome, or the phenomenon, which is a lived experience that most women experience. Also men do experience imposter syndrome. But we're not going to be talking about the men today, because that requires more research on my end. As far as I know from literature, there's not enough literature out there about how men deal with imposter syndrome, but they do deal with it. And I've spoken to them personally, and they've told me that they've dealt with it themselves. However, we want to focus today on the area for women and what we as women can do to help us to overcome imposter syndrome. And the men that are on here listening in on this can also be able to learn how to help us women to be able to really overcome these feelings of not being good enough, which is one of the things that these women they interviewed talked about. They didn't feel good enough. They felt that they were frauds. They felt that they happened to be in the right place at the right time. And that's what led to the imposter phenomenon. And later on, it started becoming known as the syndrome, because syndrome means it's a number of different symptoms that come up, a number of different symptoms that people exhibit, and they might not all exhibit the same symptoms. Not all women may feel that they are going to be found out about. Maybe the symptoms that they're exhibiting are something else, such as being too perfectionistic, or procrastinating even. Sometimes procrastinating or being what we called a superwoman or superhero would be that you want to be needed all the time. You want to be the superhero because that helps you to stay on top of the things that you're doing. That's another symptom. So there's all these little symptoms that kind of come up, but they're not necessarily psychological symptoms in that sense. They are, at least because in psychology and from what I've seen in the research, it is not well known to be part of the diagnostics manual. So you're not going to be diagnosed with imposter syndrome per se, but there's other things that come around it that you get diagnosed with, and imposter syndrome kind of comes into play there. For those of you who are in the psychology department or in the psychology field, you can correct me on that, but that is what I've read in the research that I've seen thus far. All right. So with that said, I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of what I went through with imposter syndrome, and why was I so interested in doing a study on this? Why did I do a dissertation on this? Well, I've dealt with imposter syndrome for most of my life, and a lot of the times that I know I've dealt with it, it's been that I never thought of myself as being good enough. If you had talked to me 10 years ago and said, oh, you're going to go to Pepperdine, you're going to get not only 1, but 2 doctorate degrees, you're going to just, you're going to be doing, speaking engagements, you're going to be doing all of these things, I would have laughed in your face and just told you that you're probably in la la land somewhere, because that will never happen to someone like me. I don't think I'm good enough to ever get a doctorate degree. Heck, I didn't even think I was good enough to get a master's degree. That's a whole different story right there. And I had to start learning that actually I needed to stop thinking that way, because it was a mindset issue. And that's actually something that in my research, when I did write about imposter syndrome, I actually did realize that it really is a lot about mindset. And so you'll see later on, I will share if you haven't seen it yet, I know a lot of people have seen the model, but I will share the model again for those of you who haven't seen it. And you'll see that I have a picture of a brain, and I have 4 different components on how we can overcome imposter syndrome. And we'll talk about that later on, because we have a little bit of time for that. But for me, the feeling of imposter syndrome came because, number one, there was a lot of imposter transference. That's what I like to call it. It's a term I coined in my dissertation, imposter transference. What does that mean? Have you ever been bullied before? Raise your hands, or put up the reactions on Zoom if you're not on video. If you have been bullied before, if you have been told by other people you were not good enough, and yeah, I see hands. If you were told that you were not good enough, if you were bullied by others, if you were told that you were something that you were not, but other people made you believe it, that's imposter transference. That is the idea that someone is telling you you're not good enough. Someone is telling you you can't do something. And someone is telling you that, maybe you look a certain way that you shouldn't look, you're dressing a certain way you shouldn't dress, the way you act isn't the way that they want you to act. You're being told that you're not good enough in these things. Well, you're not good enough to be a computer science major. I was told that when I started off in college. I was told I wasn't good enough to be a computer science major, and that I should consider becoming maybe a library science major, because that would have been an easy way for me to get my degree. Seriously, I was told this by a professor when I was in community college, when I was about 19, and I was still trying to find my path and figure things out. And when I was told that, it was not something that I was happy about. But at that time, I didn't know that what she was doing was transferring that feeling of imposterism to me. And I quite literally did not feel like I was good enough. And so what I ended up doing was I dropped out of the computer science major. I decided not to take those classes anymore. And I actually ended up becoming a business major. Still the best thing I've ever done, because actually I love business, that I became a business major. And no, I did not do library science. I still wanted to challenge myself, and I know business was the right way for me. And Dr. Brahme, I love you. Library science is amazing, and being a librarian is amazing. So the fact that this woman was knocking it down like that was not cool. Not at all. So yeah, so a few years later, I graduated from Cal State Northridge with my degree, and I was able to just start, figuring out what I wanted to do. What was my path? I got a business law degree. That was my bachelor's, and I'm going to go to law school. Am I good enough to go to law school? That was another thought that I continued to have. So you see that I always had this of, am I good enough for this? Am I good enough for this? Because somebody told me I'm not good enough. Now, I asked you all a question before about being bullied. So when I was about 6 or 7 years old, that's when the bullying started for me. I was bullied relentlessly, not just by my peers at school, not just by my 70-year-old peers at school and ongoing, because I was bullied all the way up until maybe my junior year of high school. I was bullied by my own community. When I say my own community, I'm Pakistani Indian. I'm first born, born here in America, Pakistani, first generation Pakistani Indian. And I was told that I didn't belong to my own community. I didn't belong to my own community of Muslim Indians and Pakistanis. Not to mention that my mom also was bullied too, because she was divorced and she had me and we were living with my uncle. And so then the double bullying began. Oh, well, how come you're living with your brother? Why can't you just get your own place? Like, why are you smooching off him? Seriously, you don't know what a person's situation is. And the fact that she's not smooching off him, he was actually doing that to her. And he was actually using her identity and basically making it so she could not ever be able to move and have her own place. She was financially abused. And that led to me having to deal with financial, verbal, emotional, and mental abuse by my uncle. And so putting that together, along with being, not belonging to this community that you want to belong to, being made fun of by your own peers, and then also seeing my teachers not being there for me, not helping me, not standing up for me and telling these people, stop, you got to talk to your children and tell them to stop making fun of students in class. There was none of that. So you know what? I believed everything that people said to me. I believed that I was fat, I was ugly, I was not good enough, because these were the things that people were telling me consistently. My own family members were saying the same thing. I mean, I had people in my family trying to put me on a diet. That was how it was. Well, you need to lose weight. You're getting too fat. I mean, all kinds of things. So you have to think about the fact that this stuff ingrains into your mind and you're thinking a lot about, oh, well, okay, is this really the truth? I mean, everyone is saying this. Is this really the truth? It's not the truth. It's not the truth. But when you hear it many times from people, that's when it becomes imposter transference. That's when you start to really just continuously think of, I'm not good enough because all of these people are saying this to me. But the truth is that if you have had this feeling before, and if you have had to deal with people bullying you, saying these things to you, I'm going to let you know right now, everything that these people are saying to you is absolutely false. And instead, they are the ones feeling the way that they feel. And they're just putting those feelings to you because they want you to be at their level. And I know it sounds cliche because we hear this all the time. Well, people make fun of you. They want you down at their level. That's absolutely true. That they do want you to be at that level in some form or fashion. However, they want to make sure that you continuously stay at that level. They don't want to see you get up here. And I'm going to tell you that we're going to get up here. We're going to get higher and higher. We don't have to be at the level of what other people think about us. And we shouldn't have to care what people think about us. Even if a million people will say the same thing about you, you're going to find other people who are going to say that you actually deserve so much more. You deserve the world. You deserve everything. You have to believe in yourself and you have to gain that confidence. So imposter syndrome is also really the idea of not really having that confidence or self-esteem. And I went through that. I had very little confidence in myself to the point where I remember even saying negative things about myself all the time. I was a negative Nilly. I hope there's nobody's name that's Nilly. I don't like to give people names and connotate them with, a negative word, but that was pretty much what it was. I was just a negative person. And I never spoke highly of myself. I never spoke highly of the things that I was doing from a very young age because I always believed in what everyone told me. And so that really affected my mindset. It affected the way that I thought about myself. It affected my confidence, my self-esteem. It affected me in even getting a job and a career, because I used to hear my uncle say things to me like, you're lazy, you're stupid. And even though he wouldn't say this all the time, and it was like he would say it when he was more mad at me about something, that stuff affected me. That hurt. To be called stupid, to be called lazy, to be basically called a good for nothing, like, oh, well, you don't do anything. What are you doing in your life? I'm trying to do a lot of things in my life. What do you know what I mean? Like, what do you want me to share with you? What do you want me to show you? Right. And so then, you have to kind of prove yourself to people. Then people ask you, okay, well, prove yourself. If this is what you're doing, you need to show us. You need to prove that to us. So you go through this experience in life where you're probably having to prove yourself to others, where you're probably having to get through a place where you're saying, maybe everybody's right and I'm not really as great as I should be, and I'm not that smart, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. But it's not true, because you are, and I want you to know that. So with that, I also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the other ways that people do also feel imposter syndrome, and especially my participants. And the reason why I talked about imposter transfers is I had participants in my study who did tell me that they didn't really feel imposter syndrome, but they had other people telling them that they weren't good enough. And so even though they probably spent their whole life super confident, knowing what they were doing, going into their career, but as they enter that career, they had a manager or a boss or someone say to them, well, you're not good enough for this, or we're not going to give you the challenging tasks and roles that you deserve. Instead, we're just going to go ahead and give you the menial tasks, the administrative stuff. And you have people going, the people, my participants, they were like, what? We want to be able to grow. We want to be able to, do more. We have a degree in engineering in the STEM field. We want to be able to do more. We want to be able to learn more. We want to be challenged. So how come we're being told that we're not good enough to be challenged? Because number one, we're women, and then we're being told that we're not good enough. And so that becomes a double-edged sword, because now we're women, we're minorities, according to them. And you're in a male-dominated field. STEM is a very male-dominated field. If you look at engineering, mathematics, technology, and although we see women in engineering and technology and in science, you're not really seeing many women in math. I think I only know one person who's in mathematics. Not many women I know personally that are in math. I know women that are in tech, and even then it's not enough. We need more. I know women in engineering. I know women in science, medicine. And again, we don't see enough of them, because we are told as women that we are not good enough to be part of these roles. It's not true. We are just as good, if not better. And we have to believe in ourselves. And so this is the discussion of mindset, right? Because we talked about how this is going to be a mindset discussion. I want you to think about yourself for a moment and think about your mindset. How do you think about yourself when you are put in a negative situation, or you are put in a situation that somebody tells you can't do something? I just want you to think about it. You don't have to answer that question right now. Just think about it. If you want to put it in the chat, you can put it in the chat. But just think about it. While I get a sip of water. When someone tells you you can't do something, you're not good enough, how does that trigger your mindset? What do you do? Do you fight against what they are saying? Do you try to prove that they're wrong? Do you accept what they're telling you? Do you put it in one ear and out the other? Okay. Emma says, I usually shut down. Yeah, that happens. It makes me question myself. Yep. That's I question myself all the time. Anytime someone said I wasn't good enough in something, or I couldn't do something, I would question myself. Depends on who said it. It's easier to believe those negative comments than positive ones, because I already see myself in a negative light. Yes, Pratichi. It depends on who it's coming from. Yep. So Monica and Melina said it depends on who it's coming from. Okay. You take it as a challenge. Yeah. So yes, these are the typical responses. We either take it as a challenge, depending on where it's coming from, we'll either react or we won't react. We believe the negative comments more than positive comments. Yeah, I had people who would give me a lot of compliments and comment positively, and I used to go, I don't believe a word he said, but thank you. How bad was that to say that? Not good, right? The fact that I would say that and I wouldn't listen to people's compliments, it was like, oh, yeah, yeah, you complimented me and I completely went the other way, because again, if someone says something negative to me, I believed it more than if someone was being positive with me, because in my head, I thought, oh, they're being nice to me, so they're going to say these things because they're just trying to be nice to me. They feel sorry for me, but that wasn't the case. Not at all. It took me a long time to realize that. You see that the effects of when people really try to destroy who you are and really get into your mindset and really try to I don't want to, maybe the word destroy is too strong. But they do that. I mean, you've got people that are coming in, they're so insecure with themselves that they see someone who's secure and they want to quickly attack that person. Yes, not believing in compliments. I went through a phase for a long time. Especially my undergrad years, I really went through that phase. I would not believe a compliment anyone said to me because I was so used to being told I wasn't good enough. I was so used to being told that, I didn't deserve to be where I needed to be at. And all of these things, that was what was ingrained in me. And that was what stayed in me, rather than, oh, well, no, what they're saying is not true. Because again, it's coming from not one source, it's coming from multiple sources. And when you're thinking about multiple sources, you're like, okay, well, if all these people are saying it, then it must be true somewhere. But when I got older, I got wiser, I started to see that actually these people were not in a good place themselves. And that was why they had constantly been making fun of me and constantly saying things, because they were trying to prove themselves to others within our community. For example, like in my community of Pakistani Indian Muslims, I used to live in the Valley, so there's that community there. I had, there were people that were competing against each other. Oh, well, my kids are so good. My kids are really great, but your kids are this. And so it was just this negativity all the time. And I think that affected me a lot. It affected my mom. My mom didn't want to talk to most people that she knew in our community because of just how they were acting and treating each other. And it was something that they were doing with each other. And somehow we got put into that situation. I got put into that situation, and I started being told that, I pretty much didn't belong in that community. And so it took me a long time to find my place. I still to this day have to be honest, I still cannot find my place in that community. It's a very hard place for me to find. So when I find someone that is from that community and they want to talk to me and they want to get to know me, I'm like, okay, this is good. I like that, because now I feel that there's some acceptance coming, and it might not necessarily be everybody from that community. It could be a few people, but those few people can really create a difference in the way you think of yourself and the acceptance of yourself. So how did I get over this not believing compliments to now I believe the compliments I get, right? Here's what I did. I started looking at the way I thought about myself, and I started thinking about why it was important for me to be open to receiving and not to be closed, because I was very closed from receiving comments, which is why I looked at everything in a negative way, because that was what I was used to. So I had to start opening up my mind, and I had to start thinking about the positivities. I had to look at myself in a positive way, right? That started with me looking at myself in a mirror and saying, you look beautiful. You don't look ugly. The people that said that you looked like that were not people who were beautiful themselves on the inside. They could have been beautiful on the outside. Perfect weight, perfect body, perfect everything. Things I didn't have. But they didn't have a good personality. If they were so busy making fun of people and obsessing about other people's looks and not thinking about a person's character and who they are on the inside, then do you really want to take these people's words seriously? You might want to take it with a grain of salt. So I had to start thinking that way. And I had to start thinking about, how I looked at myself each and every day. And it took a lot of time. I worked with a coach. I did have a coach. I worked with a coach, which was phenomenal. If you have the ability and the time and the money, I would definitely hire a coach. Coaches really help you to get into your mindset and make you understand why you're doing what you're doing, but they're not here to fix you. They're just here to give you the ability to think of for yourself, to think about the solutions and the ideas. And they're just there feeding you questions and making you go, well, okay, why? And I had a coach who was like, Okay, so tell me why. Why do you believe like this? Why do you believe in these people's words? And I was like, I don't know. It's just something I've constantly heard. What can you do to shift that mindset so you're no longer hearing their voices, but you're actually paying attention to your voice and those of people that care about you and love you? That was a powerful question that I was asked. And I thought, wow, if I could shift my mindset to not believe in those negative words and to start letting go of this feeling of I'm not good enough, they're going to find out about me, I'm an imposter, because I quite literally felt that way. It's going to help me change the way I look at myself. It's going to help me to accept who I am. And it took a lot of time. A lot of time. I'm going to be honest with you, it's not going to happen overnight. It will not happen overnight. So don't think that this is going to happen overnight. It's going to take time and a lot of understanding and a lot of forgiving of yourself. A lot of forgiving of yourself. You got to forgive yourself for all the things and all the things that have happened. Because I also want you to know that when we are discussing mindset and we're going through a mindset that's so negative, we also tend to make decisions, poor decisions, that it can affect the way we live our life. And this is because we are so busy thinking about what other people are saying to us and what other people are thinking about us, that we're not consistently thinking about what's the best thing for ourselves and listening to those people that love us. I was fortunate in the sense that I had my mom always rooting for me, still rooting for me, constantly telling me that I was great, I was good, I could do anything I wanted to do. And to continue and to move forward and not to look back and go, oh no, like what they're saying is right. And no, she never allowed me to, she never wanted that for me. And she never wanted me to believe in that. And so I know that when I would come home and I would say things to her like, well, I'm not pretty, like I'm not good enough, it would hurt her. She would hate hearing that from me. I'm, 18, 19 years old at the time saying this stuff. And she's like, no, you got to stop doing that. And I would always like just consistently do it until, like I said, I changed. And I ended up getting, a coach, and I started working on myself and I started to believe in myself. So a lot of times the reason we experience imposter syndrome is because there are things that are happening to us in our lives. Childhood trauma is one of them. When you're going through childhood trauma, some form of abuse, any trauma, anything, and it doesn't have to be just abuse or negative trauma. It could even be something positive, but that could lead to some type of trauma. And this is according to studies, because, for example, childhood trauma could not just be, well, you were, hurt in some way, or you had parents that were saying things to you. That's one thing. But it could also be that maybe you were the oldest child in your family and people looked up to you. You had siblings that looked up to you. So you had to start being more perfectionistic. You wanted to come home with the A's. You wanted to make sure that your family accepted you and loved you. And so there's that. Or you were maybe the youngest child and you were the most loved. And because you were the most loved, now you've got to think a different way. You've got to act a different way. You've got to be a different way. And those things can also affect how you look at yourself, because, maybe in your family, you're sheltered, but then you go out into the real world and then you're like, wait a minute, this is not what I've experienced in my life. What is this? And then you start to go, oh. And then these people start to feel that effects of the imposter syndrome when they finally have an experience and they go, wait a minute, am I really good enough for this? I know my parents thought that I could do this, but am I really good enough? So now they question themselves. That questioning and the consistent questioning could lead to imposter syndrome as well. So again, things that happen from our childhood, things that happen in our lives, 70%, this is research, 70% of the population in this world will experience imposter syndrome. 70%. What's the percentage of women in this? As high as 65%. We will, not every one of us, but we will at some point experience something in our lives that's going to make us question ourselves and question who we are and where we belong. And where do we belong? And I think that's another thing we don't talk about in imposter syndrome quite a bit. And that's the belonging. Do we belong with our communities? Do we belong with the people we work with? Do we belong in safe spaces that we choose to be in? And a lot of times when you feel like you don't belong in the workplace, you don't feel like you belong maybe in school, maybe you don't feel like you belong at home or in your community, that can also affect the way that you think of yourself and the way you look at things. When you don't feel that you belong someplace, it can be, it doesn't feel good. And so you're seeking to try to find yourself. You're seeking to try to be in a space where you feel comfortable and you belong and you feel accepted and happy. And so when you don't experience that, especially in the workplace, you don't experience that maybe in your community. Like I didn't experience that belonging in my community, and I still to this day don't necessarily experience that belonging. Case in point, I was at it was a really fun Islamic bazaar this weekend. And I went there with one of my friends, and we enjoyed our time. I spent probably about $600-700. Don't tell my bank that. And I had fun, but I was also in a crowd of people that are from my community, Muslims, not just Pakistani Indians, but also people from different parts of the world. You know, we had African Americans, we had Arabs, we had everyone from all over the place there, which was so great to see. And I got to see how I could interact with everybody. And I noticed that with my own community members, I would interact with them, but it wasn't meaningful. And so to me, I felt like the same, I don't belong in this group. But when I talked to the Muslims from other parts of the world, like from the Arab world, from, there were some that were from the Philippines, there were some from Indonesia, there were people there that were from Africa, for African Americans. I mean, it was so like, I enjoyed it so much. But as I interacted and talked to them, they accepted me more than my own community members did. So I still sense that feeling of not belonging, but because my mindset is different, because I look at things differently, it didn't bother me, because I just said, okay, it is what it is. I'm here, I'm enjoying myself, I'm making new friends, I'm supporting my fellow Muslim sisters and helping them to make money. I'm buying from them, I'm doing all that stuff. Great. I'm belonging here in that space and in this way. And that made me feel good. So you got to find that space where you belong, and you're going to find yourself fitting in there somewhere. The other component is trust. What happens is when you're dealing with imposter syndrome is trust. Do you trust the people that you are around? Do you trust the people that you work with, that you are in a community with, that you are in a safe space with? When there's even a slight hint of distrust, that can actually affect the way you think about yourself in that community again, yourself in that space. Do you really belong? So trust and belonging are very important in our mindset, in helping us to trust in our own selves, to trust in our own decisions, to trust in the way that we come out to the world, to be who we want to be and to be comfortable in our skin, and to be able to feel that we belong no matter where we're going to go, because that's, again, a mindset thing. And not everyone's going to feel that way. Not everyone's going to believe that way. And that's okay. It's going to take time, and not everyone's going to be accepting of us and of who we are. But we need to accept ourselves, and we need to trust ourselves. So it comes with starting with ourselves first. If you start to work a little bit each day on yourself, and I mean, when I say a little bit each day, I mean 1%. If you've read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he talks about how we're supposed to create these habits, but when you're creating habits, you're not thinking about the whole 30-day, okay, 30 days, I'm going to create this habit and that's it. You're actually thinking about the fact that you're creating a better version of yourself each and every day. And it's only 1% at a time a day. So you increment that 1%. So today you did 1%. Tomorrow you do another 1%. Now it's 2%. Then you do another percent. And now it's at 3%. And each day that you do one thing or two things that help you to change the way you think about things, the way you do things, the way you work, you will actually notice that you start to feel better about yourself. You start to see a difference in the way you think about things. You start to see new habits forming. And it's just because it's 1% and you're incrementing it by 1% each day. And it's the same with the mindset, I believe, is that when you are here to change your mindset and to believe in yourself and to believe and to have confidence in yourself so that you don't feel that you're an imposter, so that you don't feel that you're not good enough. Rather, you're now saying, okay, I'm going to work 1% at a time today to believe one compliment today, because that's what I had to go through for me to be able to trust in what people were saying to me, to trust in myself, to trust in what I had to see. I had to do 1% at a time. So somebody complimented me. I was like, okay, how does that make you feel, Aasiyah? How does that make you feel? And I had to sit with it and I had to think about it. And I went, it actually feels good to know that someone's acknowledging me. The next day, another 1%. It feels good to know that I have somebody that cares about me. Another 1%, another day. And so each day I started to trust the compliments. I started to accept the compliments. It's not about being humble. It's not about having humility. It really is accepting compliments, accepting what people are saying to you that are good for you, that are good to you, and taking away what people are saying that are negative, because they don't know what you're going through. And if they're going through something, they're going to put what they're thinking to you rather than discerning, right? You need to have that discernment to know that if somebody is saying something to you, they're not trying to be negative. They might just be having a bad day, but you should not take that personally, because it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. And even though it's cliche, it's actually truth. So I want you to think about that for yourself when it comes to your mindset. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen because I want to share this model with you. Well, before I do that, let me actually open it up. Okay. Okay. Do you all see this? Awesome. So this was a 4-step model of conquering inadequacy and imposterism feelings. This came straight from my dissertation. And I am planning on writing a book about it for somebody who's going to ask, are you going to write a book about this? Yes, I am. Don't worry. It's going to come out this year. But this is the 4-step model of conquering these feelings that we get of not feeling good enough, not feeling our self-worth, not having that confidence because we believe we're imposters. I don't want any of us to believe that we are. I don't want you to believe that you are not good enough. And you're here clearly because you know that you are amazing, amazing women. You are amazing people. You do not need to, feel any kind of way, right? You want to feel good about yourself. And so the 4 steps, and these are the 4 steps that came from my participants as well, who really talked to me about what they had to go through to help them to overcome imposter syndrome. The first step is accomplish. If you have goals that you're trying to set in your life, write them down, because that helped me. For me to be able to start really working on overcoming my issues. And let me share a quick story actually, because I wanted to share this. So when it came time for me to find work after I got my bachelor's degree, it was really hard for me. And I will tell you, every time I looked at a job description and I wanted to apply for a job, my mind would immediately go to something my uncle would have said, like, oh, you're stupid, you're lazy, you don't know anything, kind of those kinds of words. And I believed them at some level, because when he would say things to me, I would have them out, listen one ear, out the other ear. I'm like, whatever, my mom is there for me. My mom doesn't think that way about me. I think good about me because my mom thinks good about me. Like, that was kind of like what I was trying to go through. But those words are damaging and can really get into your system, and you don't even know when and how they can get absorbed in your system, which is why you got to be careful with people's energies. And so when I tried to apply for positions, I wouldn't even get to finish the application because I would start to go, I don't think I'm good enough for this. Yet I had the qualities, I had the qualifications, the degree, everything that they were asking for, but something in me kept saying, no, you're not good enough, don't apply for it. And I would not apply for that job. Have you all gone through that experience? And it doesn't have to be just applying for a job, but applying for maybe school, maybe applying for something. Have you all gone through it? If you have, in the chat, you can say yes. You can say, thank you so much, Dr. Heather, for coming. You can say, raise your hands, whatever you want to say. Yeah. If you have gone through that, where you are applying for positions, you're applying for colleges, doctorate degrees, whatever, you probably might have gone through that. Portia, you said yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it took me a long time again to really get over that idea of the fact that, oh, well, I'm not good enough. Actually, you are good enough. You have all of these qualifications. I swear our talent acquisition industry sucks right now. And I'm literally going to work on trying to change that around, because we do have issues with our talent acquisition system. I have had people come up to me telling me, man, am I good enough to even have these positions? Every time I apply, I never hear back from anybody. I don't get any interviews. And I'm like, you know what? This is happening to everybody. It has nothing to do with whether you're good enough or not. There's a serious situation out there with the talent acquisition industry that needs to change. And so, but that was kind of what I was going through, right? So I had to go through this whole thing. And it's funny because my participants were talking about this. I'm like, I actually went through this myself a long time ago to help me to overcome imposter syndrome. So this is great. And so they basically confirmed what I had already been doing for myself, which is setting goals. So accomplish is to set your goals. You have a mentor that you secure, if you have a mentor or a coach, somebody that you want to work with to help you to set your goals and to help you to start working on accomplishing them. So accomplish is that first step. The second step is support systems. How many of you have a circle of influence? I see some of you raising your hands. Yes. Yes, you can put it in the chat too. Yes. Circle of influence. These are people in your life that support you, that love you, that care about you. Like they will do anything and everything to make sure you are supported and you are loved. My support systems have come through for me so much in this last month or so. And just for those of you that don't know, my mom's been in the hospital for over a month and in the ICU, and she's in long-term acute care right now. Literally haven't gone through so much. And, I'm sitting here taking care of all this other stuff and making sure that she's going to be okay, but she's going through a lot. And I'm not going to get into the details about it. Those of you know, and those of you who don't know, you can always reach out to me and ask me later. But yeah, your support systems are everything. And my support systems have been there for me to help me through everything I've gone through in the last month and a half. And it lets me know too, when I think about my support system, these are people that I talk to. These are people that are available, that are open to me to discuss with me. They relate with me. I relate with them. We support each other. And your support system comes from your colleagues. Well, I'm going to say colleagues with a grain of salt, because I know some people are saying not every colleague supports me, and that's fine. You choose the ones that support you. So your colleagues that support you, the friends you have in your life who support you, you might have some family members who are also very supportive. Mom, dad, like for me, my mom's my support system. I can't say that about other people in my family, but my mom's my support system, right? She's always cheered me on and always told me I can do things. And even in the initial days of being in a hospital when she wasn't able to speak, she was still telling me, what are you doing here? Go work. You need to go work. You have students to take care of. You have to do this and you have to do that. She's my support system. So your friends, your family, your colleagues, people who you coach, who you're coaching with, your mentors, these are all people who are your support systems and may have gone through the things that you're going through right now and can lend you advice, support, and say, hey, let me know how I can be there to help you. That's your support system. Make sure you have that, because that really, really makes a difference in overcoming imposter syndrome, because you start to feel the belonging and you start to feel the trust that you need to feel to change your mindset. And you can see here the brain that I have, because it's a mindset issue. You have to change your mind to accomplish your goals. You have to change the way you think in order to have good people in your life and to be choosy with who you want in your life, because you don't just want everybody in your circle of influence. So be aware of that. Choose the people you know are absolutely 100% going to support you and show that support to you. And then you have investment. There are people that come to me saying, I just got this promotion. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And my thing to them, my answer to them is, you don't know what to do? You invest in yourself. You join associations. I'm in human resources. So my background is in human resources. I'm in several human resources associations. I go to their events on a monthly basis. I try to get out there. I am part of Toastmasters. I take, extra classes or courses that I like to take for fun. I'm getting, trainings. I'm doing things to help invest in myself because I want to learn and I want to grow. And if you are investing time, money, and you in learning things, continuing education, courses, getting therapy. Therapy is actually an investment when you find the right therapist. And having a life coach, having a good mentor, going to these meetings every month, you're going to pay some money for these things, but listen, they're worth it. So investment is important. And finally, acknowledgement. The fourth and final step of this model that I've created is acknowledgement. We don't acknowledge ourselves enough. We don't celebrate our accomplishments enough. How many of you say, oh, I just got this promotion, or I just finished my dissertation. Oh, I just passed my qualifying exams. I just, finished, a heavy load at work, and actually take the time to acknowledge yourself and say, good job. You did it. Great job today. Write it down. Go treat yourself to a nice dinner, a cake, a movie, something. How many of you do that? Be honest. Raise your hands if you acknowledge yourself. Do you acknowledge when people compliment you? Like, do you acknowledge that? Because what I do now is when someone compliments me, someone says good things to me, and I've been hearing a lot lately of people telling me how strong I've been. Okay, that's great. So now what I do is I keep that and I screenshot the text messages I get. I screenshot the messages I get on my Instagram or my Facebook messages, wherever people are messaging me and saying things. And I screenshot and I keep it because I can go back and I can acknowledge that, yeah, these are people that are letting me know what they're saying about me and what they think about me. And I'm going to acknowledge that and celebrate that, because that means that they're seeing what it is that I'm doing. You have accomplished a goal. You want to be celebrating that goal. It is difficult to internalize it, Milena. Yeah, it can be difficult to internalize it. And that's where the work needs to be done. Why is it so difficult to internalize? We have to ask that question. What's blocking us from being open and accepting to receive? When we figure out what those blocks are mentally, it will shift our mindset. And we need to ask ourselves these questions. We need to think about how we can shift the way we think about things. If you got a promotion, don't just ignore it and move on. You really need to actually sit down and say, wow, I just got promoted today. This is amazing. You know what? I'm going to go and take myself out to dinner tonight and a movie and celebrate this. Or call up one of your friends in your support system. Guess what, girl? I just got promoted. I'm a manager now at this position. I'm so excited. What are you doing tonight? You want to hang out this week? And do something like that and hang out. Do something fun for yourself. Write it in a journal. I have a journal. I like to write out things. I like to write out what I've accomplished, what I've done, and it helps me because I get to go back and look at it later. And that actually helps. So I want you to think about these 4 steps: accomplish, support systems, investment, and acknowledgement. And I want you to think about what you can do to help you to really overcome these feelings, these barriers that we've put in our own way, these barriers that maybe other people have put in our way. And how do we start kicking these barriers out and say, no, I'm going to be open and accepting. I'm going to be confident in my ability to do the things that I'm doing and the choices that I'm going to make. Whether those choices are what other people are going to enjoy or not, it doesn't matter. It's what you need and what you want that matters. So I want you to really think about your mindset and how you can use your mind and how you can shift and reframe the thoughts. So if you start to think negatively, immediately catch yourself and say, wait a minute, why am I thinking like this? Question yourself. Ask yourself the why. Because I've had to do that many times to stop me from thinking negatively and say, okay, no, turn it around. What can we say that can make the situation positive? And then you change the way you think, you go back in a circle, and now you go, okay, this might have happened and this didn't work out today, but here's what I'm going to do. It's like if a doctor is telling you not to have hope for your loved one, but you're saying, I don't, you know what, the doctors are going to say what they're going to say. I'm not going to carry that negativity. I'm actually going to, pray and believe and know that there is hope, and because there's always hope. This world is full of hope. And so when you think about it from that situation, you become more positive. I've had people tell me recently too, wow, you're really positive about everything that's going on right now. And I'm like, yeah, because you cannot be negative. And if some negative mind comes to me, or someone says something negative to me, I immediately shift it and I say, no, wait a minute. And I go to my support systems right away and I tell my support systems, hey, this is what's going on. What do you think? And then they're there for me and they listen to me. And so that's why this 4-step model is so important, because at the end of the day, and as I talk to you about this, it's not really even just conquering the feelings of inadequacy and imposterism. It's also to help you to shift and reframe your mindset so that you start to believe in yourself. And that is what I want to leave you all with today. We have about 4 or 5 minutes and I want to open it up for questions and answers and get you all engaged. But yeah, that is what I want you to do. I want you to think about these 4 steps we talked about today. And I want you to think about your support systems, how you're investing in yourself, the goals you're accomplishing, and what you're doing to celebrate you, to acknowledge yourself, and what you're going to need to work on, because your mindset and the healthy, positive mindset is important. And I'm not talking about being one of those super positive, yay, pretty people. Like that's, you want to have that, you want to have some of that realism. But you want to have positive outlook in life, and you want to think positively in life. You don't want to think negatively. That's going to change the way you think about you. It's going to change the way you think about life. And it's going to hopefully change the way you think about trusting and belonging, not just for yourself, but also with other people. So with that said, the floor is open for questions and answers. Feel free to unmute and ask if you would like to ask any questions. You can put it in the chat and we can talk.
How large was your sample that you did your research with?
Such a good question. So my sample, actually, I had about 12. I reached saturation at around 8 or 9 because they all started to say the same things. But I continued going until I hit 12 participants.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Don't be shy. If you want a copy of the 4 steps, you can email me. I'm going to put the email. I'm going to put my email here in the chat, and you can go ahead and email me, and I can give you a copy of the 4-step model. And I can answer any questions you might have after the fact. So just keep me posted and let me know. I do want to be respectful of our time. It is 6:29. So we have 1 more minute left. So if there's anyone that wants to ask a question, they can do that now. Or we can just.
Dr. Aasiyah, I have a question. In all your research, what was the most surprising thing that you found?
That's a good question. The surprising thing that I actually found was the imposter transference, because I actually never thought about that ever until I had a couple of participants telling me that I've never actually experienced imposter syndrome until I had somebody tell me I wasn't good enough to do this job or to take something on. And I thought, that's interesting. I've never thought of that. I never thought that you could hear that from other people and actually internalize it and make that a part of, I guess, a part of your thoughts and the way that you think about yourself. I mean, because clearly I went through it and I just didn't know what it was, So I thought that was really insightful and surprising to me. I also thought what was really surprising was that a lot of the women engineers that I did talk to, a lot of them did think about the fact that they were really going through major imposter syndrome for a long time. And that when they reached a specific age in their mind or a specific level that they were at in their career, that it actually started to reduce their imposter syndrome feelings. They started to actually see that automatically they started to gain more confidence in themselves. And I think it was also the work that they were doing internally, as I was just talking about, that allowed them to make those changes and to start seeing a reduction in imposter syndrome feelings. And so that was also very surprising to me in a good way. Any other questions? And if not, it is 6:31. So I will hand the floor back off to both you, Dr. Gabby and Swellen. Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aasiyah. It's so nice to hear you talking about your model and everything that you overcome. I really appreciate your journey and all the wisdom that you were sharing with us today. I want also to thank for all participants here and also say that this week we also have the New Rules celebrations starting tomorrow. And we have also a second speaker for the Women History Month on Thursday. The link for registration is the same. And with that, Dr. Gabby, do you want to say a few words before we close, or?
I just thank you all for being here. I mean, you all have already said everything that I could possibly say. This has been amazing. I've been playing catch up with all of the other sessions. Anyway, so thank you all for being here, for supporting us, for supporting Dr. Aasiyah tonight. And I invite you to continue to participate and join us. And submit your ideas. If you think that we haven't addressed something or you'd like to see more of something, we're always open to hear from you all. Thank you, Swellen, for the amazing job you've been doing. I have no words, but thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Gabby, and thank you all again. I wish you a blessed evening and see you next time, hopefully tomorrow in the New Rules and on Thursday with Dr. Heather Backstrom as well. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your comments. Good night, Melina. I'll call you later.
Hey, lady.
Are you talking to me, Charlotta?
Yeah.
Let me stop recording.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm gonna edit